Coming up on this episode of Tom Talks Rubbish, I said from day one, like, I want to run a wrestling podcast, but only if it doesn't become detrimental to family. And that remains and it has meandered at times over the last 2 years with writing books as well and stuff. But at the end of the day, this is a passion project. Like, it's a passion project that I'm doing as
Hmm.
a semi living now, but it is ultimately me talking about wrestling, which is something I've loved since being a little kid. And as soon as that passion bit goes, you've lost the you've lost it, haven't you? As you know.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Tom Talks Rubbish, and I'm back with another interview. You know who this is because he's really blown up and just really good in this space at the moment. I'm joined by the one and only Ben Veal from Wrestling Life. So, welcome back on the show, my friend.
Hello, Tom. Thank you for a lovely introduction.
I'm really excited to have you back on. I know we talked about this a little bit last time I had you on, but for my audience that may not know, for your audience that have grown and are coming over and things like that, where do you first discover wrestling, Ben, as a fan?
1992. I feel like I have talked this to death, but SummerSlam 1992 was my first
Hmm.
introduction to wrestling, and I have been hooked ever since. So what's that now? 33 glorious years of wrestling fun.
What was it about 92 SummerSlam that made you go, yeah, I like this now? Was it the fact that it was in England, things like that?
Yeah, it was. So it was a couple of months before SummerSlam '92. I started collecting the trading cards. I got this first Hulk Hogan trading card. I was like, wow,
Mm,
what on earth is this guy? This giant orange bronzed Hulk of a man, like a real life He-Man.
mm,
That was kind of what hooked me, the trading cards, and then yeah, it all led up to SummerSlam 1992. So at the tail end of when a lot of people were kind of winding down from watching wrestling in our age group, that was when I first discovered it. And then I played some serious catch up once I got the bug and did a
mm.
deep dive into everything from kind of 1985 onwards. And then as my fandom grew, then started exploring 70s wrestling. So very much kind of came in at the peak period of the WWF in the UK and then worked my way backwards.
Mm. You talked about that being the peak of the UK and things like that. Did you ever go to when they did these shows in the Attitude Era, though? Did you ever go to any of them interactions and things like that?
Yeah, I did. So I went to One Night Only, which was incredible. I went to Capital Carnage. I went to Rebellion in 1999, the first one. And yeah, that was my three. So the first three, pretty much, I missed No Mercy in 1999 because I think that was up in Manchester or someone up north. But I did
Mm,
three of those first UK only pay-per-views, and then life starts getting in the way. By that point, I'm 16, 17, and suddenly I went into different directions for a bit. But yeah, I mean, those first shows, Capital Carnage was pretty incredible in terms of not so much the card, but like the crowd for that show. That was like the peak of the Austin era. I think the main event, if memory serves, was like Stone Cold versus The Undertaker versus Mankind versus Kane. Like, if you just kind of wrap your head around that being like a
mm,
a pay-per-view main event in the UK, it was just an insane time. And a year after, I went to Rebellion, and it was like Triple H versus The Rock in a steel cage match. Like, we were very, very spoiled in the late 90s as fans.
mm. You talked about us being spoiled in the late 90s, though, Ben. Do you think us wrestling fans in the UK, particularly with the shows they've sort of done since 2022, do you think we've been spoiled since then as well?
Well, I paid £20 for those tickets, and now you'd be looking at £300 to £500 a ticket. So
Mm.
I'm not sure. I think we are, yeah, good quality entertainment's come in our way, but it's definitely at a premium these days.
That brings me nicely to a nice segue of like where your current fandom is and things like that, because I know you've been very public about taking a break from watching WWE because of not agreeing with, is it their politics or their business stance? I don't really know what the word is.
Uh, it's a bit of both, really. I think TKO is doing enormous damage to WWE and the legacy of the brand. I think the overt capitalism of WWE is pretty off-putting now. I think the Saudi Mania is a massive own goal, regardless of how
Mm,
much money on the table, because I think WrestleMania is a kind of sacrosanct institution that should be really shouldn't have been touched. But more than anything, I think it's fatigue with the current product. Actually, I think it's all of this stuff would be okay if the quality of the product was incredible. But I think WWE has been sleepwalking for a couple of years, really. It's had some good creative moments, but not enough to justify the elevated price tags. For me, having been in this space a lot more in the last 2 years, it's just reaffirmed to me how much I love the golden era of wrestling and how much I
mm,
love speaking to people who were part of such special times in my life. So, if anything, those the videos I shared recently are more about a mission statement in terms of where I want wrestling life to go, which is more in depth,
mm.
thoughtful interviews with wrestling legends from the past.
I understand that completely. You mentioned the mission statement of wrestling life there. I'm curious to talk about like you've been very sort of like these are my principles. I'm sticking to them, which I really admire. Whether it was taking a hiatus from X and things like that. So why is it so important to you that your guests and your audience sort of see a this is a man with principles, not just someone that wants clicks?
I it's not really so much about my audience as about me as a content creator, really. Like if I don't believe in something, I can't produce compelling content.
Mm,
So it wouldn't be right for me right now to be really going after WWE interviews and really being so vocal on the internet about how fantastic I think they are when actually at heart I'm not feeling very aligned to them. And that's as someone who's been a 33-year loyal fan of the company. Right now, I'm not feeling particularly comfortable with the way the company's going, so I don't massively want to give it airtime, the current product. I think there's more than enough podcasts and YouTubers and influencers out there blowing smoke up WWE and saying how wonderful the product is. I'm not there trying to court interviews or trying to get tickets to shows. Now I think I'm quite happy with the lane that I've got.
mm,
So it's not about the audience. It's just more. I mean, hopefully that attracts similar like-minded people. I think I'm just trying to offer an alternative, and this is just me. At the end of the day, this is me navigating life as a content creator. I'm the same as you. I'm just sitting here with a laptop and a microphone, having conversations. Um, those conversations have to bring me personally joy,
mm,
because if they don't, they're not going to bring my audience joy. So it has to be guests I believe in, it has to be topics I believe in. I am a political person. That's not always the best thing to be, but I do have some very strong beliefs about politics and religion and
mm,
other areas of life. And while I try to have that not bleed too much into the show, um, it does guide how I operate and what I create. So I think for me, that releasing a video saying why I'm stepping away from WWE for a while was more an opportunity for me to say to my audience that I have got, this is who I am. Hopefully you'll journey with me. If you're following this channel because you want weekly interviews with WWE current WWE talent, I'm not really the place for you, but there are going to be many, many alternatives that will give you that. But this is what I will offer you.
mm. Mm. How have you sort of found that the reaction, for lack of a better word, to your audience being like, to your mission statement, shall we say?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. Apart from unfortunately that video when I recorded it, I had issues with my fire alarm, which I couldn't stop my smoke alarm beeping. It's been going on for weeks. It's finally stopped. But the main topic I got, Tom, the main comment I got on that video was sort your smoke alarm out. So
I
there's a
know,
lesson there.
as your mate, I didn't want to throw sort of, I know what it's like as a creator. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It was either I sit on this video and don't do it for 1 or 2 weeks whilst I wait for an electrician to come out, or I just crack on and hope my microphone doesn't pick it up. But it did, and whatever. But no, I mean by and large, it's been nice to see the comments, and obviously there are a fair amount of people that disagree with me, and there's a lot of WWE loyalists to the end, absolutely, and but also checking in the comments kind of led to my other video about bullying because actually I haven't maybe throughout my time as a YouTube content creator, I haven't actually spent that much time looking and responding to comments. And when I did dip my head in and started looking, I was like, yeah, I might just might just bow out again of looking at the YouTube comments now because
Mm.
the internet can be a fairly unsavory place at times. And I know I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but I'm not really trying to be. I'm just me, same as you. I'm just me doing interviews and trying to have some fun along the way. And I don't think there's any place in life or on the internet to be unkind about how people look or how they talk or any of that stuff. Just if I was always raised, if you don't like something, then keep quiet, really. You don't have to
I
say it and
was
make someone's
raised
day
with a
worse.
similar phrase, which is like, if you got nothing nice to say, just don't say anything at all. Sort of.
Exactly. Exactly.
So you talked about we've talked about the mission statement of wrestling life and things like that. I realize we've gone around the houses. That's just how my
It's all
conversation
right.
is,
That's
you
how you
know.
roll.
But how did wrestling life come about originally and things like that?
So Wrestling Life came about pretty organically. I had another podcast called Good Journeys, which is still going, or taking a little
Mm,
bit of a sabbatical right now. And Good Journeys was all about exploring, inspiring people's lives and the lessons they learned. And one of the first guests I had on that was Nick Aldis because I've known Nick for a long time, and I thought it'd
mm,
be really interesting to explore like how you become a gladiator and a wrestler. And
mm,
we had such a nice conversation that kind of led to me having a few other wrestling people on. So I had Matt Cardona on, had Lillian Garcia, had Stevie Richards. And each time I had a wrestling person and I was focusing on life beyond wrestling and trying not to get into the weeds of storylines and all that stuff because I had my audience in mind.
mm,
But after five or six wrestling people, I was like, I've got two options here. I either stop interviewing wrestling people because that's not what this show is all about, or I create a dedicated podcast. And so that's what I did, for better or worse, in September 2023. So we're 2 years in now.
mm,
Launched Wrestling Life with Jeff Easton, our shared producer at Tall Lake Productions.
mm.
Shout out to Jeff.
Oh,
And
100%. He makes me look very good. I'm not gonna lie.
the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be at content creation, at production, as I say. But
I agree.
um, yeah, I launched the idea. Honestly, didn't know whether it would take off. Kind of went to my very small network and um, put feelers out for a few wrestlers to come on, and it grew very quickly. And it continues to seem to be growing at quite a nice rate. And it's yeah, I mean, I'm really quite astounded at the amount of wrestlers that have agreed to give up their time for it because
Mm,
it's not, as you know, it's not easy to get people to give up their time for podcasts,
mm,
particularly for free, particularly
mm,
in the wrestling space. So I'm very grateful that so many people that I admire have taken their time out to speak to this British guy about wrestling. And each time I just try and talk to them about stuff that is beyond wrestling. So of course we talk some storylines and big moments because it's a wrestling podcast, but I try
mm,
and center, 75% of the conversation, I try and build it more around how they were feeling, how it affected their family, mental health, well-being, like trying to get under the skin of the person beyond the character.
mm. Who has been your sort of, oh, I didn't expect this person to be like that. Maybe you saw them on TV as a kid, or like the person behind the character, shall we say, was different to the character.
I don't know really, because I feel like you see a lot of people now, like beyond, you kind of get a good sense of what people like. But a couple of guests that I'd absolutely love to have on who I didn't know how well we click and stuff. One was Bill Eady, so Demolition Axe,
Mm,
who obviously I was quite intimidated to interview Bill that first time. Like nicest gentleman in the world, lovely, lovely man. I thought, he's such an old school, tenured wrestler. I didn't know whether how he'd feel about doing a podcast with me, but he was delightful. Um, Another sleeper conversation that I absolutely loved was with Lodi, so former WCW star Lodi. We had a
mm,
great conversation, talked a lot of faith, talked about him having a near-death experience. There's been so many guys I've had connections with, and you don't really know until you hit that little red button, do you? You don't really know what you're
no.
going to get, and that's what I love. But probably one of the best connections I've made has been Barry Darso. So Demolition Smash. If you ever have
Mm,
Demolition, but
yeah.
my personal favorite for Replay Man. But Barry's got an absolute heart of gold and has been such a great supporter of the show, as has Brian Clark, Mr. Adam Bomb. So I do find it quite ironic that, or surprising that like I've got these figures behind me, or these toys that I had as a kid are now like friends. It's quite bizarre.
I heard you mention this in another interview, but I might be misquoting this, so I do apologize. Brian Clark has almost been like your middleman in some ways with certain people of
Yeah.
like, yeah, I've done his show. Please do Ben's show if you get time, sort of
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, unofficially, but I mean, he introduced me to Barry. He introduced me to Godfather. He's introduced me to a bunch of people. He's always looking out for me and saying to because the thing is, and this is I think how the show has grown at the rate it has, is like the wrestling industry is all about trust. You'll know this with, wrestling content creators and journalists that you
thing.
speak to. If Brian says, I've done Ben's show, he's really good, you should do it, there's a far higher likelihood of the person doing my show than if I email them and say, I'm Ben, I have this show, I'd like to have you on. It just, wrestling is all about the boys helping the boys. And so many of my great guests have been because people have recommended the show. And
Mm,
that means a lot because that means that actually the conversation is right and the conversation is valuable because it's fine for you and I to do interviews with people and we kind of want to get that for ourselves and for the channel, but to know that you've given someone a genuinely good experience, and that's what I try and do. If I've got an hour of the person's time, I want to leave a little impact on them and have
mm,
them going away thinking, oh, I enjoyed that and I talked about some things that I didn't think I would talk about.
mm.
And that's kind of what I try to each time, kind of try and think of the slightly quirky questions to ask people.
What has been, you mentioned quirky questions there. What has been your sort of most like, wow, Ben, that one came out of left field, but that's a really good question from a guest, maybe. Not from a guest, from you
Yeah,
to a guest, should
I
I say?
think I think I remember I saw Victoria, Lisa Marie Varon. I remember seeing her in Philadelphia when I was over for WrestleMania, and I'd only just had her on the show. And I remember she kind of grabbed me and said, "Oh, this is Ben Veal. I just did a show. He was great because he asked me loads of stuff I wasn't expecting." And
Mm,
that was because I centered loads of the conversation around ADHD. I'd looked into her background. I'd listened to a lot of podcasts she'd done. I learned about that she had not only about neurodiversity, but I learned that she had a job where she was having to phone people up to tell them that their loved ones had passed away. She had
mm,
had a lot of really, and I'd done my research, and I think she was surprised that a wrestling podcaster knew all this stuff about her life. But I always try, wherever possible, to listen to as many interviews as I can, like I know you do,
mm,
hear what people have been asked, and also crucially, so that I'm not asking them the same question. So
mm,
I try to not give them the same interview that they've had. And that's a challenge with coming to the space as late as I have. Like, I started in these interviews 2 years ago,
mm.
Chris Van Vliet's on year 18. So
Something like that, yeah.
yeah, it's like so many people like Chris and like Sam Roberts and stuff have been doing this for so long. You're like, I've got to kind of try and ask you something new that you haven't been
Mm.
asked about numerous times. And that's not always easy.
You told me something in an email we had back and forth that I'm going to throw back at you because I fully believe this. It's like,
Right.
just
Was it
do good.
nice?
Oh, it was very nice. It was very
Okay.
nice. Just do good work and the people will come. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, whether it's the audience, whether it's the uh, guests, just do good work and the people will come. And I think that's something both you and I need to remember at times, I think.
Yeah. It's not easy because neither of us are ever going to have the biggest shows in the world. You have your own audience, you build at your own rate. And actually it's just about being, really happy with what you've got. And that's not easy. It's not easy in the social media world to
Mm.
be content with what you've got. I found that very, very hard at times with comparing, you see, oh, why did that person, especially when you interview wrestlers, why did that person get access to that wrestler when I've been trying and not got a response or
Mm-hmm.
they've turned me down or whatever. And then you just have to I just then go, yeah, but look at the people I did get to interview. Like, wow, didn't, if you told me 2 years ago, I get to speak to all these people, I'd have never expected it. So you can only focus on what is going well for you because if you look at everyone else you'll never be good enough. So it's a journey I'm on kind of consistently of trying to remind myself that actually what I'm doing is has enough value in its own right and it's enough. I think as I've gone further along on this journey with wrestling life,
Mm.
it's much more important to me now that like this is fitting in well with my family, that it's that I'm getting good balance with it, that wrestling isn't taking over my life. That has been a big challenge for me because I adore wrestling. I absolutely adore wrestling. I have done for 3 decades. But being in the wrestling space 7 days a week isn't healthy.
Oh
And
no.
now that the show has reached a certain point and I'm in a schedule of how I do the interviews and stuff, I try and have
Mm.
at least 3 days away a week where I'm not looking at wrestling content, not on wrestling social media, not seeing what's happening, not involved in discussions, not looking at YouTube, just like, put the content out there, hope it's enjoyed, but it's kind of out of my, once I've scheduled for content, it's kind of out of my control whether it's going to be
Yeah.
enjoyed or not. And then I will step in from time to time and do a topical video, but only if it's something that I feel quite strongly about, like the, WrestleMania 42 prices or the Mark Shapiro comment, something like that,
Mm.
or the John Cena retirement, which I can guarantee is not going to be his last match in December. Um,
You
you know,
mentioned that in a
yeah.
video. Why do you believe that, my friend?
There's no way John Cena is going to have his last match in Washington, D.C. on a Saturday night's main event. I think it might be his last match for 18 months, might be his last match for 3 years, but there's name me a wrestler who has retired and stayed retired.
If we recorded this in 2018, I would have said Shawn Michaels, but I
Yep.
take your point. I do take your point.
And who did Shawn Michaels come out of retirement for?
Saudi Arabia, in terms of
Correct.
okay. I see where
And where's WrestleMania in 18 months' time costing $250 million?
okay. I
Yeah.
see where you're going with that now.
So
I
if
really
if
do.
if John Cena doesn't have one last WrestleMania match at either 42 or 43, I said in a video, if it gets to 10 years time and it hasn't happened, then I will genuinely eat my hat. So someone can find me on YouTube and I'll do my best to consume a baseball cap because
Mm,
there's no way you don't, he is the biggest star in wrestling.
mm,
He has probably by now eclipsed Hulk Hogan.
mm,
Probably by the time his career is fully done and he's gone all in fully on his film career, he will have eclipsed Hulk Hogan. Like you don't get bigger than John Cena
mm,
and you don't retire John Cena on an episode of cable television.
mm.
No matter how many US views you get, there's too much money on the table, and I don't think that's a fitting way to go either. So it will be presented as his last match. I'm sure they will bring out someone suitable to be his opponent. I know it's been talked a lot that it will be Brock Lesnar and it will be the redemption story. I mean, if that is the case, that's definitely not your last match. You don't,
No, I
you can
don't.
go out better than that. But no, I mean, all of this stuff, I'm not involved in booking. You never know, do you? But as a wrestling fan, I'd be shocked if that is definitively his last ever match.
We sort of skipped over this when we were talking about our shared producer that is Jeff Easton and things like that. How did you two sort of, first of all, connect? And what do you think he brings to the show, sort of thing?
Well, I've known Brett Jeff for like 25 years, so a long, long time. We went to university together. We did the same degree together, so I've
Mm,
known him since being back in Cambridge in the early 2000s. And Jeff and I used to go to little wrestling shows together. I think we went to one where Gangrel was there, and another one where Tatanka was there. Like all these little kind of Suffolk wrestling shows where we'd import like a
mm,
talent, and then yeah, we went to a show in 2006 in Birmingham together. So we've known each other a long time and have this shared fandom. But it was because of what I saw what he was doing with your show that I joined for Dots for Wrestling Life. And actually, that if it wasn't for TTR, then I don't think Wrestling Life would exist in the way it does because I had a producer for Good Journeys and I hadn't really joined the dots together that this was something that Jeff could do at
mm,
a really high level until I saw what he was doing for you. And so I said, if I were to do a wrestling podcast, could you do what you're doing for Tom? But for me, different style, obviously, but same
mm,
principle, And what he does is he takes these very unexciting, unattractive Zoom files that we're recording on right now, and he
mm.
makes them pretty. And by the time
Yeah.
everyone sees this, it will have branding at top and bottom and all this stuff. And and he just creates magic with. I give him very little really. I'm the one I ask the questions, and he does all the rest. So if anyone out there is listening who wants to pimp up their podcast, as I say, or
Yeah.
do it more professionally, then Jeff is your man because I think there's an awful lot of talking head podcasts out there these days of two people having a conversation via Zoom or StreamYard or whatever. I think what
Mm,
makes the real difference is slick production
Clean
values
production.
and attention to detail. Jeff is always finding these obscure wrestling photos from the 70s or
Mm,
80s or whatever when a wrestler references somewhere. He has an encyclopedic knowledge for uh of wrestling trivia, and that really adds another level. I think the guests, when they look back on it, um really appreciate it. I can't say who, but one of my recent guests who does a lot of interviews
mm,
DM'd me and said, like, your production values are top notch and it makes a real
mm,
difference. So I think a lot of my guests do rewatch, at least sections of the interview.
mm.
And yeah, I think it just makes a difference to the viewing experience. I kind of liken Wrestling Life episodes to a bit like listening to a full album.
Yeah.
Like, you can obviously watch the little reels and the clips and stuff, but actually it has been intentionally designed by Jeff to be something you watch from start to finish on
Mm.
your TV. With a great coming up clip and an outro and everything. So yeah, he's been a superstar, and long may it continue.
I 100% agree. One story I'll share about Jeff is the interview I did with your co-host Ash Ajaz
People's Breaker.
a couple of months ago as we record this, as this airs, should I say. He noticed that Ash had a blinking light throughout the entire interview and was like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna do something, mate, to fix that because I don't want people to have an epileptic seizure." I had not noticed that through that entire hour, and
Yeah, he's
that
that's the
just
thing. This is the thing I don't notice either when I'm recording. The reality is, like, I've got a bit better at kind of getting
mm,
people to set their lighting up and stuff. But the reality is, especially when you interview a lot of kind of old school wrestlers, I'm just grateful to get them. So if they
yeah,
do turn up on an old iPhone in portrait form and they're dark and stuff, it's like, if I can improve it, I will. But if it's going to impact on the time and I get with them, then
mm,
I don't push it too hard. And so, whilst that's not ideal, you'd like to think everyone was going to dial in with a crisp camera and a nice backdrop. The reality is, you do what you do. Really, you get what you can get. It's the content at the end of the day.
mm.
And Jeff has done a wonderful job with some of those far less ideal presentations to make them look a bit more visually appealing.
What has been the one for you that like, yeah, Jeff, good luck with this one, buddy? Like where you're like,
Oh, I
maybe
don't
the
know. I
wrestler
don't
was
know.
doing.
It'd be unfair to answer that, but
Oh, fair, fair.
I've had a few that have been, poor lighting and stuff like that, or just where the conversations need a bit of needed tightening.
Mm, fair.
Just when it's gone a bit kind of off topic to the point, but actually it wouldn't be very interesting to the audience. So I never remove anything that you know is greatly interesting. But sometimes conversations do meander, and actually
Mm,
you want to give people a compelling conversation from start to finish. So Jeff's very good at spotting those bits as well.
mm. That's really, really cool. You mentioned earlier that you're a family man and things like that, and you balance family with content creation and things like that. You mentioned like the 3 days a week off things and things like that. But how do you balance like, because obviously, like me, you're talking to a lot of people from the States and things like that. How do you balance family time with like, yeah, I want to record this episode now?
3 p.m. Eastern has become my friend. So that's kind of
Really?
what I say to people. Yeah, like I generally, when I used to take interviews, or like to break the fourth wall, we are recording this at 3 p.m. UK, which is not a normal time for me because my
Mm,
my son will be home from school and stuff. But with American guests, I just record at 3 p.m. Eastern, which is 12 noon Pacific, I think.
yeah.
Works for Canada, even in Calgary. When I've had some Canadian guests on, it's like 11 o'clock in the morning. So I just pre-plan ahead and I say, this is my recording slot. What days can you do? As
Mm,
opposed to when I used to take all sorts of times. Like I think I interviewed RVD at like 1 o'clock in the morning or something insane in the
shit.
UK because that was the availability and I didn't want to miss it. But I won't do that now because actually it doesn't affect it doesn't do my sleep well. If I do an 8 p.m. Eastern interview, sorry, 8 p.m. UK interview,
Yeah.
even if the interview goes long, I'm done by 9:30
Mm,
and I can still sleep. So
mm.
it's a lot of learning about actually like it's the old analogy that you can't pour from an empty cup, but like I need to
Definitely.
sleep, I need to look after my kids, I need to be there for my wife. I said from day one, like I want to run a wrestling podcast, but only if it doesn't become detrimental to family. And that remains and it has meandered at times over the last 2 years with writing books as well and stuff. But at the end of the day, this is a passion project. Like it's a passion project that I'm doing as a
Hmm.
semi-living now, but it is ultimately me talking about wrestling, which is something I've loved since being a little kid. And as soon as that passion bit goes, you've lost the you've lost it, haven't you? As you know.
Definitely. You mentioned there, thank you for that brilliant segue, my friend. Writing the books and things like that. How did that come about with, I know, was Mark Mero your first one?
What this old thing? There it
Yes,
is.
sir.
Yeah, Mark's my first, and then since then, Wrestling Life has also published Rampage, this incredible book from Lee Herbert,
Hmm.
which is available via our brands now. Mark was the first, and then I've just announced I'm working on Doug Williams' memoir as well.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, lots going on. But Mark was the first. Mark took a chance on me. That came about through him being on the podcast. We got on famously. I pitched him the idea of writing his life story, and 400 pages of 1 year later, there is a life story. And very proud of
Wow.
it. I think it's hopefully going to do some good in the world. It's a beautiful story, Mark's life,
Mm,
a real genuine story of redemption and resilience after some really tough times. But it's got a lot of wrestling stuff in there, and and times from Mark was there during, in the explosion of the Attitude Era. He was also in WCW when it barely had any fans there. Like, he had a fascinating arc in the WWF, and he was obviously right by Sable's side for so much of it. So there's a lot of stories there to appeal to wrestling fans. But at the same time, there's also a lot of heart to it. Talk about his time boxing, his time growing up in poverty, his health scares afterwards, dealing with
mm,
suicide, a lot of bereavement. There's a lot of dark stuff in it, but it's also a beautiful story talking about how he's moved forward into what he does now, which is inspiring young people worldwide. So yeah, it was a cool journey to go on.
mm. You mentioned there that you pitched it to him and things like that. This might be pinning the curtain back too much, but like, how does it work then? Does he sort of send you like notes on his life and you
Uh,
put it together? How does that work?
no, my job is to make it as easy as possible for him. So, I mean, the whole book was constructed over a course of a year of calls, but me obviously doing a research, laying out a timeline.
Mm,
Um, this book was in partnership with Inside the Ropes, so
mm,
I worked with Kenny McIntosh and Dante Richardson as well, who all contributed a great deal of time and energy to laying out the timeline and presenting kind of these facts from Mark's career, or indeed conflicting accounts from Mark's career. There's so many shoot interviews and stuff that exist saying this person said this. What does Mark have to say about that?
mm,
And Kenny and Dante did a great job of kind of weaving in that kind of wider macro bit in wrestling, like what was Mark, things like what was Mark's perspective on the Montreal screw job,
mm,
stuff like that, which actually he wasn't involved in any way, but he was there that night, and so he has memories. And so it was very much a team effort, but the book comes together through lots and lots of these, really, lots of Zoom calls, and then structuring it and writing it. And that'll be the same process for that is the same process for working on Doug's and any future memoirs. It's for me as the writer to bring it all together and
mm,
to have it make sense. But obviously, it's to the subject is their memories and their reflections. What helped Mark's book a lot, and I'm going to be doing this for Doug's book and subsequent books, is going to other people who were part of his career and asking for their take. So, had conversations with DDP, Lex Luger, Mick Foley, Eric Watts, Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo, Justin Roberts, and a few others. Private conversations with them to talk to me about their memories of working with Mark, and then we weaved little snippets of that throughout the book. And that's something I'm going to continue doing because whilst it does add a lot of time to the process, I think as a reader it adds a really nice extra perspective because you
mm,
get different voices in the story. And I particularly like, like there's a bit in the story where Mark has one perspective on his argument with Eric Bischoff. Eric Bischoff has another perspective,
yeah.
and we've put both of those points of views in. They directly conflict with one another, but
Mhm,
it's a conscious editorial choice to be like, well, actually, Eric and Mark both have this absolute memory of things happening in a different way.
Mm.
as is the human experience. So actually,
Yeah.
we've got them both in there. Who knows what actually the truth is and how that did go down on that day? But there are both accounts in that book, and so I'm going to be carrying on that with Doug. I've got a huge list from Doug of people from his career that are going to be contributing to this book. And yeah, it could be a very different book, but a really exciting exploration of kind of the British wrestling's revival. I mean, obviously, everything Doug did in Ring of Honor,
Mm.
TNA, AVW, Progress, like he's pretty much been everywhere bar WWE. So a lot of um, a lot of people have been positively impacted by Doug Williams.
Mm. How important not important, yeah, important. How important do you think writing the book for Mark and then Rampage and things like that has been with the growth of wrestling life? Because I know it was like number one on in certain sites at one point.
Yeah, I think it's been massive. I think I think it was it's been the game changer of the channel by a country mile. And before Mark's book came out, I was one of many, many, many podcasters interviewing wrestlers. I'm still one of
Mm.
many, many podcasters interviewing wrestlers, but I now also have the legitimacy that a former WWE and WCW star trusted me with his book. As a result of doing his book, I got interviews with, on the channel with people like Mick Foley and Eric Bischoff and Lex Luger, people who don't genuinely do interviews, um, beyond their own channels. Specifically because I built up trust doing a book and because they got to know me first. And then I said,
Mm.
I also have this channel. Would you like to be a guest? Very, very different if you've already had a private conversation with someone
Yeah.
to then say, do you want to do it because they get you as a person?
Mm.
I think it's been massive. And it's led directly to Rampage, because Lee got in touch with me
Mm.
directly around the time of Mark's book and told me about his book he had or had not, he was developing. And I said I would absolutely love to read it because it sounded right up my alley. With he's talking about Silvervision and Hasbro and Coliseum Home Video and sticker albums and SummerSlam '92. I was like, this is literally my peak fandom.
Yeah.
He sent me this manuscript in a post, and I got, I don't know, a couple of pages in, and I texted him. I was like, this is genuinely superb what you've written. Um, I want to publish it. It's
Yeah.
similar to the Mark conversation, but I was like, I think I can help you reach a wider audience because I've got a brand and a platform.
Yeah.
But your book's fantastic. And I helped him a bit editorially and made some suggestions and proofed it and stuff. But, that book is Lee's handiwork 100%. And it's tremendous and genuinely one of my favorite wrestling books I've ever read. So I feel very privileged that it's the first kind of wrestling life book. One of hopefully there'll be many wrestling life books in the future. Um, yeah, and it's exciting. All this stuff is a lot of work, and I'm daunted by the prospect
Mm.
of writing another book. I'm not going to lie, I'm daunted by the prospect of starting it all again. But I said to Mark after we finished his book, I said I think I'm going to miss this because
Yeah.
I did a session every week and then I wrote up that week's chapters, and I actually really enjoyed the tangibility of it, and there's something very tangible about releasing a book.
Mm.
So and also it's been nice. It's opened a lot of things up for Mark again. It's opened relationships up for him, and if it hadn't been for that book coming out, he wouldn't have ever met up with Eric Bischoff again. They've now met up and had some lovely times together.
Oh wow.
I'm looking forward to helping Doug to put a real definitive finishing point on his career
Mm.
the right way, and hopefully doing that for more wrestlers in the future as well.
That's really, really cool, my friend. With everything you do, you must have some great advice for people that want to be in this space and things like that. I know you charge for this now, so if you want me to send you some money after this question, I get it. But what is your advice for people that want to be in your position, interviewing, writing, everything in between, my friend?
Well, it's a very broad question. If it was podcasting, which is kind of what I'm doing as a consultant now, if it's podcasting, I would say the number one bit of advice is think carefully about what you are able to take on within your life and your
Mm.
circumstances and try not to overstretch yourself. So if
Mm.
you are young, free, and single, and you have the ability to spend 4 hours a day interviewing people and creating reels and on social media promoting it, then you're probably going to do very, very well in this space. Because if you can do that every single day, 7 days a week, you're going to steal a march very quickly. If you are in my position, which is early 40s with two children and a full-time job and other stuff, then doing 4 episodes a month is actually really ambitious. And at times I push myself too much doing 4 episodes a month.
Mm.
So know what you are capable of and try not to go beyond it, because you can't, if you look at some of the biggest content creators out there, um, like for example, I know you've had Chris Van Vliet on your show. I've had Chris on mine. He helped me a lot in the early days. Chris will be the first to say that he has a team around him now, that
Yeah.
it's not him doing everything. He is the person leading the interviews, researching the interviews, and obviously he is the face of a brand, and it is him that people want to speak to. But he has a team of people now helping him to make that as big as it is.
Mm.
Um, it's still me on my own at the moment, and so I have to think really carefully about how much I create. So that
Yeah.
would be my number one bit of advice is, and also thinking about how many social media platforms you can realistically have a presence on,
Yeah.
and maybe not spreading yourself too thin. I mean, I'm pretty much only on Instagram. Is pretty much the only social I ever do. Occasionally put something on Facebook when I remember. Never use X anymore. So I've kind of found a platform I like, and I
Mm.
tend to focus my content on that. But
That's,
also have other, if this is in the wrestling space, which is probably going to be if people are 40 minutes into a conversation between us two,
mm.
um, keep other interests going, because wrestling isn't everything. And wrestling is very, very special. But, you know, I love nature. I love long walks with my dog.
Yeah.
I love reading non-fiction. I love playing with kids. Like, have other interests, because wrestling will always be there, but some of that other stuff won't be.
That's really, really cool. And to be honest, a beautiful way to end this. But as we do, Ben, I do have just one question for you about you mentioned there about not taking too much on. So how did sort of Gone Too Soon come about with a great man that is Ash Ajas? That sort of series come about though.
Well, yeah, I mean, it kind of actually feeds it loops back around quite nicely, because actually I was finding that I was doing all of my interviews out of hours interviewing Americans, which is
Mm.
really disruptive on family life. I was finding that nearly all of my guests were American, so I was having to do all these evening interviews, which is fine, but it's also quite, it is can be disruptive. I met Ash, we got to talking. He had an interest in being a YouTuber. We found we clicked. And so we came up with an idea, and there will be more, but we'll probably evolve from Gone Too Soon to others. But um, the beauty of recording with Ash is, of course, we can record on UK time. We can do
Yeah.
we do Friday mornings. It's great. We both have a cup of coffee, take the kids to school, and then we record. And so that fits really comfortably into my life. Like there's an episode a month, which is fits really well into family life, which is great. It's also provided a bit of a platform for Ash. So I was really pleased to see him on your show, because Ash is amazing. And the idea of Gone Too Soon really is I came, selfishly, I came to wrestling interviews really, really late. There are loads of people that I would have loved to have interviewed
Mm.
and haven't got to. It is the next best thing. I will never get a lot of these people on my show, but it's special when we get to talk to them. And it's doubly special when you get to have another talent talk about them as well. So we won't always have special guests, but we had like Marc Mero talking about Hulk Hogan, and we had Brian Clark talking about Brian Adams, and we'd have the brilliant Sarah Page, aka China Syndrome, has just recorded one talking about China.
Mm.
So when you get another person involved in that conversation, it's really special as well. But Ash is amazing. I think he's going to go very, very far. Hopefully, he won't outgrow wrestling life too soon, but I'm sure he's got big things in his own future as well. And that's the lovely thing about the podcasting space is you see so many people learn skills, evolve,
Mm.
adapt. Kind of, I look at what my studio setup was 18 months ago and where I am now, and probably what I'll have done to this in a year, and my camera will probably be better. Like you just keep learning, your camera's better, like you just keep tweaking and evolving, don't you? And
Yeah.
so I'm excited to see where wrestling life goes. I'm excited to see where Ash goes, and I'm excited to see where things go for me. But I am taking it might not sound it with like various books coming up, but actually I am taking it at a good pace now. I know what's involved in writing a book.
Mm.
um Doug's book will be released in 2026. It will probably be towards the latter part of 2026, because I know what that process is like.
Yeah.
And Doug and I have both got to do it around our family life and personal commitments. So it's just playing the long game now. You look at people within this business who've been doing this a long time. Look at the kind of the Bill Apters or the Dave Meltzers or Keith Elliott Greenbergs of this world. Like a lot of them are like 40 odd years into this now as
Yeah.
wrestling journalists. Like, God willing and touch wood, me and you will still be doing this in 30 years' time. But we won't be doing it in 30 years' time if we absolutely destroy ourselves now, trying to land every interview and trying to do everything. You have to, as I've learned now, you have to slow it down and
Mm.
pace it. And some of the most special interviews I've done are people that I didn't think were coming on my show, and I'd email them and heard nothing, and then like 3 months later, I get a reply back saying, "Sorry, I missed this. Yeah, I'll do it." So
Oh yeah.
sometimes just kind of
Process.
trusting the process, trusting the universe, just kind of laying back a little bit about it, which is something I'm not very good at doing, but just slowing down and going, if it's meant to be, it'll be, and if it's not, well, something else will crop up.
That's a beautiful way to end this. But as we start doing some wrap up questions, this is very, very self indulgent, and I'm going to ask it anyway. You were one of the last guests I had on before I moved premises and things like that, Ben. So I'm curious to know, have I improved? What did you enjoy about this conversation? Everything in between.
I said to you before, I think you're great at what you do because you listen, and you keep a good pace going. You clearly have a plan for what you want to ask, but by the same token, you adapt as you go. I think you're excellent. I said this to you before. I, to be honest, I can't even remember the last conversation. It was so long ago now. My brain's like a sieve. I know I enjoyed it, which is why I've done another one.
I
So,
really
but I think you're
appreciate.
great, and just keep going.
I really appreciate that, my friend. Just quickly, before we do the classic Tom Talks Rubbish wrap up segment, you'll know where we're going in a second.
Yeah.
How do you define success, Ben, for your channel? And do you view everything you've done in the wrestling space as success?
I think as I get older and hopefully a bit wiser, I think I go back to that analogy of happy wife, happy life is kind of what I've come into success is that, if your home's out of balance, whether you're married or whatever, but if your home life's out of balance, nothing else is successful. And for me, I'm starting to realize that actually the only thing that's successful about this is if my wife and kids are happy, I'm contributing to the home and I'm being a good provider. I don't just mean financial, but I mean a good rounded provider to the family. So that's success for me these days. I've written a wrestling book. I never thought I'd get to write a wrestling book. If I stop tomorrow, I've done more than enough because I'm friends with the replay man, and not many people can say that. So yeah, I don't know. I just keep going, but I think my view of success is very different than what it was 10 years ago.
I understand that completely. What do you think the overall legacy of your show will be eventually, though, Ben?
Hopefully, it's a really nice kind of library and archive of honest conversations. And touch wood, so far, not a single one of my guests has passed away. But
Mm,
there's an inevitability about that. 75 episodes in with the wrestling industry as it is, there's an inevitability at some point some of my wrestlers will be no more. And
mm.
that's already happened with my Good Journeys episode. I lost a good friend of mine who was on the show.
Yeah.
So that's already served as a kind of legacy piece for him. At some point, hopefully some of these episodes will live on forevermore on YouTube and Spotify and everywhere, and it will be a place for family and friends to go back and hear a nice conversation with that person, and for fans to hear a different perspective. Yeah, I think for me, it's just been a pretty crazy little ride, really, and already taken me in directions that I never expected. So yeah, hopefully a good legacy when all's done. But hopefully that will be a long time to come.
I hope so too, my friend. But as we wrap this up, you know where we're going with this, Ben. We are going to do the classic Tom Talks Rubbish wrap up segment known as generic wrestling questions. Those of you that have seen my interviews before will know that's why I asked Ben his favorite match, favorite pay per view card overall, favorite wrestler's entrance theme, favorite tag team, and the biggest generic question of all, guys, his favorite overall wrestler. Basically, the questions I assume you guys might ask him on social media and in YouTube comments. So now he'll have a place to be like, I've answered this. Please go watch this. So, what's your favorite match, my friend?
I'm going to actually, I might give you a different answer to what I gave you last time. because I think I gave you SummerSlam 1992, Bret Hart and British Bulldog.
You did.
I'm going to give you a secondary match as well, which is a very, very close second, which also involves Bret Hart, but it's Bret Hart versus Steve Austin from Survivor Series 1996, which
Oh.
I adore that match. I think it gets lost in the shuffle because of WrestleMania 13, but it
Mm,
is a beautiful technical match. It's Bret Hart and Steve Austin at their very best in Madison Square Garden. Bret's got so much fire in him after an 8 month time away. Austin is just about ready to explode and gets finally gets paired with a perfect opponent. It's a tremendous match. I love that match.
that's really, really cool. What about your favorite overall pay-per-view card, my friend?
I can't even begin to think what I told you last time. I really love Royal Rumble 2000. I think
Mm,
I've got a soft spot for Madison Square Garden shows. I love that show from top to bottom. I remember that was the first show that I watched live on Channel 4. I love the Hardys and Dudley's table match. I loved the actual Battle Royal. I adore Triple H versus Cactus Jack. So yeah, let's go. If not my favorite, very high up there is Royal Rumble 2000.
that's really, really cool. What about your favorite wrestler's entrance music, my friend?
Whew, gosh, very big fan of Glorious Bobby Reed. I think that
Mm,
was possibly the most iconic wrestling entrance music ever. Um, and I also love classic Chris Jericho Break the Walls Down.
mm, that's really, really cool. What about your favorite tag team, my friend?
Today, it would be FTR, and it has been
Mm,
for years. I think FTR, the Revival, have been everything that tag team wrestling has needed. Um, Going back old school, uh, I'm a Heart Foundation guy.
mm. We get to bring this segment back then, Ben. I haven't done this in a while, but you get to book FTR versus the Hart Foundation anywhere you like, any period you like. Where's it happening, my friend?
I'm going to book him in Cardiff because we don't get anywhere near enough shows, and I think that the Clash at the Castle showed just how good Wales can be for pro wrestling. So I'm booking him at Principality Stadium, and I think I'll have FTR go over to be honest because
Mm,
they're the future of tag teams, and they've just got so much upside still, even after all these years.
that's really, really cool. And then finally, Ben, the biggest generic question, in my opinion. Who is your favorite overall wrestler of all time?
It's the easy one. It is the Hitman Bret Hart, of course, as I've told you before.
Mm,
Always been a Bret guy, always will be a Bret guy. However, I will add a little bit of an extra layer to this, but I do have a top three. So rather than just giving you the same answer, it's Bret Hart, but in very, very close succession, it's Kurt Angle and Bryan Danielson. So I've always been the guy, I've always loved the technical wrestler, I've always loved the storyteller. And I think what I particularly love about Bret and Bryan Danielson in particular is their great ability to be the underdog in any
mm.
situation and to always make you think that they are counted out, and then at the last minute they claw it back. Because I think there's a good lesson in life there for us all.
That's a beautiful way to end this, my friend, if I'm honest. But as we do, the question I end this show on, my friend, is I believe as YouTubers, podcasters, even just people with general social media, we're all sort of going to live forever in a very, very strange way if you think about the world. So, what is one piece of content from wrestling life or even good journeys that you're like, yeah, remember me for that, guys? And then what is one that you're like, nah, I'm good. You can forget about that.
So I'll start with the worst one first. So I would encourage you to avoid um, watching my 2 hour and 40 minute interview with Nick Aldis unless you really want to have a deep dive into his life, because that is
Mm,
an example of how not to structure an interview and to try and ask your guests every possible thing under the sun and not really recognize when they're tired or need to finish. So fair play to Nick for biting his lip and cracking on through that one.
mm,
You have to learn. You have to learn about timekeeping in podcasting. I mean, my ultimate legacy episode of all time will be the episode I recorded a few months ago with my one of my best friends,
mm.
Dr. Stuart Farrimond, who passed away about a week after we recorded. I recorded
Yeah.
that in a hospice with him. Very different to any episode I've done before. Um, Done out of necessity because we lost him very soon to a brain tumor.
Yeah.
but that has been that video, I think, has been a time capsule for a lot of people. And when we were all grieving his loss, it's something that kind of brought us all together. And I got to show Stu the edit, a rough edit, but the edit before he passed away. And that anything I do in my life, content wise, nothing will eclipse that moment with him. That's obviously non-wrestling. Within the wrestling world, I've really enjoyed doing the Hall of Fame ones. I'm doing, we've got these Hall of Fame, Wrestling Life Hall of Fame series now, and I love those because they're really like deep dives into people's careers and lives in and out of wrestling. And I got to do one in person with Mike Chioda. That was lovely. Mike's a great guy. But like doing one with Marc Mero, doing one with Buff Bagwell, Candice Michelle, Diana Hart Smith about the Bulldog, and Bronwyn and Michelle about Dynamite Kids. Like it's just really special. I feel very honoured that I'm able to give out some awards and help these people get recognition. And 2026 is all set and ready to go. I just haven't announced yet who the first inductee is, but trust me when I say it's a very, very big, very, very big name going into the Hall of Fame.
We're going to end this on a cliffhanger then, guys and girls.
Yeah.
But as we wrap this up, man, please promote yourself. You've always been very good to me. I appreciate your time today. Thank you for another great conversation.
Thanks,
but
Tom.
where can the good people find you, your work, etc.?
Easiest place is at Wrestling Life online on Instagram, Facebook, all the good stuff on YouTube. So you can find me at Wrestling Life with Ben Veal on YouTube. Or if you prefer to listen and not see my lovely face, then Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all those places to listen to the episodes. We have a new long form interview episode goes out each and every week, usually on a Tuesday evening in the UK.
It's well worth doing, guys. One of the hardest working people in this space, but one of the nicest as well.
You too, Tom.
Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Tom Talks Rubbish on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter or X at Tom Talks Rubbish, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye now.
Thanks for watching this Tom Talks Rubbish conversation. Before you go, please make sure you leave a like on the video, share it around, and subscribe to Tom Talks Rubbish on YouTube, as well as follow Tom Talks Rubbish on Twitter/X.